Okay, I think I'm live. All right, so it's always hard when you have Facebook up and you are on Zoom. It is Fridays at 5 and I'm live. And today I am talking about the art of saying no. This was a topic that was brought up by a few people. And so I decided to go live and share a little bit about this. So I've created a presentation, which I'm going to pull up in just a moment. But this is a topic of conversation that I think a lot of people actually fear. And so, hold on a second while I get up my presentation. While I'm doing that, I'm going to just ask kind of out there, if you're watching this live or you're joining on a replay, if you have ever struggled with the ability to say no, you can just share in the comments or just pop a note or give me a thumbs up. I know I have. And even more so when I was younger, I really struggled with the ability to say no. And so it was important to me as I got older in my career to be able to support people and in their ability to actually say, enable people to say no with what I call a little bit of a fresh yes. And so we'll get into that. Here we go. So I wanted to definitely share, because there are two topics that are actually associated with the same topic. Let's say when we talk about the art of saying no, we actually also talk about creating boundaries, which is another topic that I think people struggle with. So I think people feel like they can't create boundaries or they don't know how to create boundaries. And so I'm just getting my, oh my goodness, here we go. I think I've got two people live with me. And if you are live with me and you want to say hello, then please drop a note in the comments. I'm trying to keep an eye on the comments at the same time. There we go. So today, coming back to the conversation, we're going to be talking about creating boundaries and the art of saying no, since they correlate and they go so well together. For those of you who don't know me, I'm in my 40s. I'm happily married. I'm a fur baby mama. And I'm an entrepreneur. I have been for a very long time, but I actually wore two hats for about 14 years. And we have 3 companies. I'm in partnership with my hubby. For those of you who know him, and for those of you who don't, his name is Courtney James. And I get told I'm a mindful business coach. And a lot of people don't actually know what that is until they start working with me. Why? Because many people have different versions of what they perceive mindfulness is. My work brings me a ton of joy. And in this particular moment, I'm about to go back to finish my certification to become a mindful self-compassion teacher. And I'm super excited about that. And my why is to teach, motivate, and inspire people around me with the power of mindfulness and storytelling. So I get to live that mission every single day. So I feel very grateful for that. And I really believe that my mission in this world is to open the hearts and minds and souls of business leaders by unleashing their vulnerability and authenticity, by connecting their personal stories to their business purpose. And my journey that I take people on is really rooted in mindfulness. And it's really one of self-discovery. And it's an exploration and a professional journey. And so people sometimes tell me that I come across as articulate and confident. They also tell me that they understand what I'm trying to convey with my messaging as a branding coach and a mindset coach. But that hasn't always been the case. So my journey to confidence, empowerment, and becoming a mindful CEO has been more of a marathon than it has been a sprint. And that's okay. That's totally normal. For most people, it's a marathon. In fact, part of the beauty of being a business owner and an entrepreneur in today's day and age is that it's a constant journey, constantly learning, constantly growing. And if you stop challenging yourself, then you might want to question what's gone wrong. Oops, there we go. I want to start this conversation and this journey that we're embarking on this evening together with a story. So it's a story about me as a young girl. Some of you may know this story already. Some of you maybe not so much. So when we're younger, we start to really learn and imprint our beliefs. So it starts when we're about 2 or 3 years old, and they imprint on us like a layer cake. I like to, and they use the analogy of a layer cake because I love to eat cake. So they imprint on us one layer at a time, right? And so the more we hear the same messages and we hear about the same beliefs, the more it imprints in our brain, right? And the more we believe it. And that's really where my story starts. When I was about 4 or 5, and I think one of these pictures, I actually am 4 or 5, I used to love coloring, right? I used to love painting, being creative. I really enjoyed spending time in my room. I had a small room, but I used to love sitting at this little table. And I can distinctly remember my box of Crayolas. And I would sit at this yellow table and spend hours painting pictures. Now, here's the thing. I was never a very good artist. My pictures weren't that fantastic or like nothing to write home about for sure. But I enjoyed the process and I really enjoyed the time to myself. Here's the other important part of my story. My parents were super loving parents. They're very attentive. They were very adoring. But we grew up in this great neighborhood and we had a really pretty nice house. What's important to note was our house was kind of interesting by design. It felt like something out of the 1950s, or maybe that's just how it feels right now. We had a living room and a dining room, and they were beautiful. And I remember my mom went to all this trouble decorating them. Such attention and care that she gave to them. There was like this beautiful plush pink sofa. In fact, that sofa is still there today. And there was these beautiful Oriental rugs, but no one ever sat in the room. Like very, very rarely. To this day, the sofa is still there. Those Oriental rugs are still there, and the room feels untouched. Not to mention, to us as kids, those rooms were off limits, right? We were told that we were not supposed to go in there. So we knew, my brother and I, we knew that if my parents were having guests over and they were using the living room, it was important. It meant business. And so one particular time, I remember this day particularly, my parents were having friends over, but I was so busy coloring. I was up in my room. I was feeling awesome. Everything was great. And I was just excited because I was in this world of creativity and coloring. And my parents were busy getting ready to have guests over. And that's when my mom said, okay, company is coming and, we're going to be busy. Don't disturb us. But I was just in this other orbit. I was so focused, laser focused. And when my parents had company over, my mom would strive for perfection. My mom was a perfectionist to the end. She would hustle and bustle and the food and the attention to detail, but I didn't care. I wasn't paying attention. I was creating the masterpiece of all masterpieces. So of course, while I'm creating the masterpiece, all this is going on downstairs. My parents' friends are coming over and they go into the living room. And something happened. I finished my painting and it was the world's most magnificent moment. I had to share it. I had to share it with the world. I had to share it with my parents. And so I got super excited and I ran out of my room with my painting in my hand. And I can remember hitting the top of the staircase with this built up, pent up excitement. And I'm getting ready to run down the stairs. And you have to realize our stairs came right down. And as you got to the bottom stair, it opened up into the living room. And as I hit the landing, I'm screaming, Mom, Dad, oh my God, it's like the bed. And I haven't even gotten like halfway down the stairs. And I've got this painting in my hand. And suddenly my father, I can hear him get up and I hear stomp, stomp, and he comes at me. And he's basically saying to me, stop, don't move, don't take another step. Don't you dare come in here. And he grabs the painting out of my hand, the coloring, the drawing out of my hand, and it rips. And he says to me, go back. She doesn't even look at it, of course, dismisses it. Go back to your room and don't come back down here until we're done. Boom. It was like he said no to me, like I wasn't worthy, like I didn't matter. And my confidence was shattered in one foul moment. And now my belief system was built. And all I heard was no. You don't count in this moment. It takes one moment, one word to create an imprint of emotions. And it all comes tumbling down. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about how we can shift that and how important the power of yes is. So yes, the opposite of no, promotes risk-taking. It builds courage and resiliency, and it creates open-heartedness and approachability. Just saying yes feels so good. And if you're here today, we live in a world where we want to create a yes world, right? And if you're here today and you agree with that comment, you can say, yes, I agree. Why do we fear no so much? We do. We have this automatic resistance to the word no. In fact, probably seeing this presentation made people, for some reason, subconsciously feel uncomfortable. Because there's a lot of power in the word no. No is a moment of clear decision and personal choice. It defines action towards personal responsibility. It's a tool and a barrier. We need no to help us carve space and create boundaries. It helps us define our limits. And it's two-faced. So what do I mean? It's two-faced. On the one hand, we use no to create boundaries. And the one hand, we use it to monitor our internal impulses and urges, right? So we're creating boundaries and we're using it to monitor our internal impulses and our urges. It's the one that stops us from using our inner voice outwardly, or amping up our road rage, or smoking a cigarette when we want to and we shouldn't. It's called the discipline no. It's the self-governance that's going on and doing all of the inner work. It's conscious and it takes effort. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but we pick up right back up again and we try once more, right? So we need both types of no in our world. We need no. It's part of our language. It's part of our inner and our outer dictionary. Oops. But no starts early for us in life. It comes at us really early, right? And we get practiced at it from childhood. We build imprints of how we interpret it. And because of that, we over time and over life, we start to learn how to challenge no, right? If you can relate to that, you can put a comment in the comments as well. But no doesn't just come out of nowhere. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And I shared a little bit of a personal story before about my childhood and where no came from for me. But maybe it brings up a little bit of a story for you of maybe when you first heard no, when it first came into your life, or you can remember when it first came into your life, or the first time it had an immense effect on you. And for me, my biggest shift in terms of my ability to manage my inner no and my external no was when I found mindfulness. And I really found mindfulness later in my life. And so I had all of these impressions of how I perceived no already built up within me. And it wasn't until I was able to start studying and learning the practice of mindfulness that I was able to better manage, but also break down the perceptions and my ability to judge others and myself, not have patience, not approach things with a curious mind. I had no self-trust, and I was not very accepting, to be honest. I was constantly looking for results, striving for outcomes, striving for productivity, and I was not able to let go. It took a lot of inner work and a lot of hard work to get to a place where I could manage from a frame of mindfulness. And so a lot of research has been done on when we should choose no. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a reference around the when we should choose no, and talk about it in a little bit of detail. And I will reference some of the work from psychology today. So I'm just going to list a couple of the main times I would say that when no can benefit us. So the first is when our values are compromised, when it saves us from exploitation or being taken advantage of, when it supports our efforts to maintain priorities, goals, and meet timelines. And this is the one that I think has come up the most in the conversations that I've had with people. When it protects you from abuse by others, and when you need strength to change course, like when you need that ability to pivot, change your mind, move onwards with something new. It really is the root of change, change, change. And so I want to dig into each of these in just a little bit more detail. So the first is, if you've done the work on your values and you understand your core values and you're living by your values, then being able to monitor and align yourself to them gives you the freedom and the ability to say no to anything that is misaligned or out of alignment to your values. And there's a lot of strength and confidence that can come from being put in situations that compromises your values. So, but the first part of that work is really actually having confidence and affirmation around your own values and knowing what they are. And that takes work. The second is about self-protection. And so it's really remarkable how much people will ask of you, right? Even demand of you. Things that you probably wouldn't even ask of yourself. And so protecting yourself can be a valuable asset and a way and a time when you will want to leverage no. And it's a clear, calm and indication. And this is what I call the no yes, the no and, possibly providing a solution. When we just blanketly say no, we're leaving things empty, and we're not creating a positive environment or a positive container of a relationship. So the word no can be softened and created in a container of safe space when we encase it in solution-based thinking. The next is around prioritization and focus. And this is where I think most people struggle and have a lot of challenge around no. So this is around derailments, goal setting, prioritization. And I use an example, like a story, like where a boss is upset or angry because, and this is just a fictitious name, but Sally is not getting her work done on time. Now, Sally, the assignments and tasks are just constantly getting derailed or missed. The timing of them gets missed. Now, he makes a comment, or she makes a comment, the boss, that if you weren't always on social media or having chats and being so nice to everyone, you would likely get things moving and get things done on time. And Sally starts thinking to herself, well, people come to me because I'm approachable, and there are real problems here in this office, and we wouldn't be able to address them because if I wasn't here for people to have someone to listen to, and I'm very compassionate, and we would never really know what's going on here because there's real issues that we have to address. So how am I supposed to turn people away if there's no other avenue for them to talk, right, or speak? And so this is where we enable our ability to know how to balance our no and with solution-based thinking as well. And we have to also be able to say no to the people we love and we care about, or the people that we support in our work environments and we care about, because we can't lose sight of our responsibilities and the things that we are accountable for. And we can't do that despite other people's responsibilities and accountabilities. So it's a tool for us to keep our goals in mind, and meeting your own goals and what you're being paid for and what your job is requiring you to do will ultimately pay off. And so it's up to you to remain accountable. We aren't here to do other people's jobs. And so we have to make sure that we hold account to what we need to deliver. And so if we need to leverage, if we get derailed, another example would be like, so in the Sally example, it would be maybe allocating a specific time to speak to people around the office and saying, when they do come up to derail, I know, and I have a time that I can talk. And to the boss saying, bringing up this particular problem, saying there's a lot of people that have a lot of issues. So perhaps we need to come up with a process to manage that problem, putting forward a solution, an idea around how to manage the issue that is causing the derailment, rather than complaining or about the derailment. Being problem and solution oriented creates a no and, which is a yes. And another situation would be perhaps a boss that comes in with multiple competing priorities. I hear this all the time. How do you prioritize around competing priorities if there's always more priorities? It's really about, again, it's the no and. So providing a solution. And one of the best ways to do that is to leverage your accountability and their accountability, and really getting clear on what those are. And so a good example would be, The boss comes in Monday and says, here are the 7 things I want you to do today. And you go back to your desk and you go to, and you time block your time in accordance to the 7 things that need to be done that particular week. And then Tuesday comes and the boss comes with another 7 things. Well, then it's going back and saying, okay, here are the 7 initial things you wanted done. Now you've added in these 7 things and there's only the 2 of us. So we need to work together. Here's how I'm proposing we can get it done together. If it's me alone, here are the things that I've decided are the top priority. Are you in alignment with that? Put together a plan and get alignment to move forward on the prioritization. This is not a time to throw things up in the air and say, oh my God, I can't do this. Put together, you've got a problem, come up with a solution. It's not a no, it's a no and. I may not be able to get it done in the time that you want or with just me alone, but here's a plan of how I can get it done. So no can become a yes. And that's what I meant when I first started. The other part, which is the sensitive side of no, is we want to avoid no, and we need to be able to stand up for ourselves and say no when we're in situations of abuse. And by that, we mean this is the most commonly seen when we struggle to say no in our closest relationships. So the relationships that we have with our children, our parents, our partners, our spouses, husbands and wives, you name it. We choose yes because it's easier. And we just keep saying yes. So we create a pattern and a cycle, which ends up being just creating downhill momentum. And it's because we fear the outcome of no. So we fear loss, we fear abandonment, and we fear that if we say no, we won't like what's going to happen as a byproduct of no. And our emotions with the people we love most are so strong and fierce that we worry about the fear. We'd rather have the fear than that often overpowers us than our ability to actually say no. So, for example, my mom, who was chronically ill her whole life, it rendered her periodically bedridden and forced her to give up her career and change the course of her entire life, right? And her dreams in her late 20s. And that happened, in fact, right when she met my father. And my father knew this before they got married, and they got married. And my mother is without a doubt, like one of the people I admire most in my life. Like, I think the world of her. She's like, anyways, amazing. And my father and my mother were undoubtedly like loyal to each other, fiercely in love. I go visit her every month and I share stories with her. And I reminisce about the times that we had together. There's also no doubt that she's one of the only people in the world that could get under my skin on a dime. Most other people probably can relate to this about their mother. If you can, hands up, or maybe just like there's a parent in your family or somebody like a sibling that just can, in a nanosecond, do this. She had a way with words. So some would call it old-fashioned Jewish guilt. In truth, her comments and her actions were hurtful and dismissing. And comments that like, are you sure you should eat that? Are you wearing that? That's your choice. Like, that's what you're going to wear. And where is the other 10% of that grade? And then when I finally got old enough to move out, one time in my memory did she come to visit me in one of the apartments I lived in. She never came to visit me. And she knew it was dismissing. It felt like she was dismissing me, that she was making an active choice. In the early years, I never stood up for myself. And I would go and change my clothes, and I would put down the piece of food that she would question me on. And she was stripping me of my ability to say no. And later years, I took my power back. As I got older, I learned how to take the power back, and I learned how to step into my no, and I learned how to say no to her. It caused a rift between us, to be honest, and quite a deep one for some time. But I had to learn how to draw the line in the sand and stand up for myself to her. And it was worth it in the end. It turned our relationship into a very strong, loving, adoring, and respecting relationship. But it took time and it took work to consciously change the subconscious abuse into respect. And the last situation where we want to be able to enable ourselves to say no is when we're going through change. There are times in life when we're faced with really difficult decisions. It could be that you've paid a ton of money for tuition to university, or maybe someone else paid for you to go to university, and you realize halfway down the line that you made the wrong decision. It's not the course for you, right? You're not in it to win it. Or maybe you thought you took a dream job, like you went into it, like this has happened to me before in my career. I'm like, yes, this is it. This is the job of my dreams. And then you're in it and things happen, things change. It's not the dream job you thought it was. And you need to get out, right? And you got to make those realizations, and something changes, and suddenly you're sick. Like even like in job situations, it can be making you anxious and sick and nervous to show up. And everybody else looks from the outside and they're like, that is a great job. Like you're so lucky. And on the inside, you're like dying and you're stressed, right? And you're just like unauthentically showing up, and you're just going there for a paycheck. Acknowledging that it's not working, that this is something we need to say no to and we need to walk away from, is the first step. That acknowledgement, that acceptance, leaning into that and learning that we can say no and that we can accept that is the first step. A lot of us would rather just keep pushing, keep going forward, rather than acknowledging and accepting that perhaps we need to make that change and we need to lean into that change. I had to take a deep breath after that one, because I've been through that a few times. I don't know if anyone else out there has been through that, but that has a lot of feeling associated to it, and it's uncomfortable. So those are so why is no so hard? Like, why do we got to make it so hard? Well, here's a few reasons why. Neuroscience proves that no lands like more harshly than we intend it to. So just by like way of fact, like when we say no, when you hear me say no, it just lands hard. So we're kind of put up out of the gate. We're not set up for success when we say no. So we're hardwired to reject it. We actually feel pain when we hear no. So that out of the gate, that kind of just makes it harder on us. Whoops. No hurts. And you can see it in people's faces when you say it. You get that clinching, that resistance. You get expression when you say no. Sorry, my other computer is shutting down. It can lead to conflict. When we're not careful and we misappropriate it, or we use it in different ways, it can actually lead to and generate conflict-based conversations. So we have to be careful how we use no. And there it is. There's my mouse. And it's embedded in what we call a negativity bias. So it means we as people have a tendency to focus on the problems in life. So we don't tend to gravitate to focusing on the good things. We tend to focus on the negative things. So we will lean into the no and we'll hang on to it. So when we talk about the no and as with an alternate solution, that's where the art is. We can make it softer, even though we know going in, it's already going to be hard. We can provide a rationale that is grounded in fact-based opinion, not just an opinion. You want to speak on behalf of you and not bring in everybody else. We're not fighting an army. And practice what you're going to say. So practice. So you're coming across clear, articulate, and confident. And be mindful in your delivery. It's not going to be an easy conversation. So let's go in being curious, trusting ourselves and others, and patient, and using a beginner's mind, and allowing ourselves to be aware of what's happening in the present moment. And this very much leads to the next conversation, which is really about boundaries. When I talk about no, it often segues or leads into this conversation about boundaries. Does anybody have any thoughts about boundaries? Oh, Brent, I can see your comments. It's so interesting. I couldn't see your comments before. Now I can. So I just saw your comment about you're saying you've been here many times. Is that around the no piece? Maybe you know what, I think I just had my comments kind of flood in suddenly. So I think maybe that was the way I was set up. You live and you learn. Boundaries. Boundaries, I'm going to read a definition for boundaries because I thought this was like a really good definition by Jen Kennedy. And boundaries give a sense of agency over one's physical space, body, and feelings. We all have limits, and boundaries communicate that line. So I really enjoyed that definition. And we all struggle with boundaries. And one of the most common reasons we struggle with boundaries is we don't create them. We don't actively create them. We assume, we make assumptions. So there are, again, referencing the Psychology Today, there are 5 reasons that we create boundaries. For physical reasons, so like personal and privacy reasons, sexual reasons related to intimacy, intellectual reasons, so ethics, thoughts, beliefs, emotional reasons, so like our feelings, and then financial reasons. So these are all like very much embedded in how and why we should be creating boundaries. And why we create boundaries is to help us strengthen our relationships. And this is any relationship. It can be a friendship, it can be a partner, it can be a work relationship. It strengthens empowerment, confidence, self-esteem, agency, and self-care. It helps with prioritization. It helps with emotional balance and stability. and it increases growth and vulnerability. So boundaries are really important, and it's so interesting for me because we don't put a lot of effort into them. So this is like the important part is then how do we do it? So how do we rectify that? How do we now, with our relationships that we have, how do we go about creating them? The very first step is actually, oh, something happened with my slide. Knowing your own is your first step. Know your own boundaries, discover them, learn them, reflect on them. Then take some small steps. Don't go for the big ones first, and start early. So if you can't start early and this is a relationship that you've been in for a long time, don't be afraid to still take the plunge and have the conversation to start creating boundaries. Be consistent. So try not to be like, one day this is my boundary and the next day this is my new boundary, and try to be very consistent and clear on what your boundaries are. But feel free to be flexible if you're in a close relationship, that if you're testing a boundary for a while and it's not working, you adapt. That's what we call mindful flexibility. Communicate often, always, clearly. Ask each other for feedback, whether it's a group of people, one-on-one, any relationship. Always ask for feedback. What's working? What's not working? How do you feel today? And walk a day in the other person's shoes, right? We want to be empathic and compassionate when we're creating boundaries. We can't truly understand what's happening until we've walked in someone else's shoes. And these are some of the most pivotal pieces to really being able to set boundaries. Doesn't mean they're easy. We got to start somewhere, right? Oops, there goes my slides again, because this always happens to me. So if you're thinking about starting to create boundaries, my recommendation is start with self and build. I always say to everybody, small steps lead to big change. Oh, there it is. Know your own. Oh, well, it's just me and my animations. So that is the end of the presentation side of things. I'm going to stop the share. If anybody has any questions about saying no, or wants to share anything about creating boundaries or saying no, please go ahead and put your comments. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm also happy to hear your insights or your thoughts. And I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you being live. I see Brenda's here, and Attila. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And if there is no questions, then I'm going to wrap up this presentation for this evening. I wish you a very beautiful and happy Friday. It is 5:45 already. It's hard to believe. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me.